area. And during our short stay, we sighted over 60 varieties, and we were a pretty noisy crowd. Compared to Africa's other great parks, Kafue remains unspoilt, with neither the hideous treeless vistas caused by elephant, nor five-star hotels planted at the animals' favourite waterholes. And throughout, one feels that it is mankind that is the second-class citizen in this beautiful paradise reserved for Zambia's greatest natural resource, its wildlife. It is hoped by all who took part in Kafuex that the Zambian government is encouraged in its efforts to preserve the unique naturalness of this park, and that a determined effort is made by everyone to stamp out that ever-increasing cancer called poaching. However, our brief holiday was coming to an end, and our last moments at Chunga were spent trying to visualize what hazards lay ahead. And during our deliberations, we were watched over very carefully by our ever-faithful escorts, the hippos. So this is Mwengwa Rapids. We've got 25 kilometers long, all rapids. No one really knows what's inside there. 5 kilometers wide. Some people have been a little way in, but no one's been through it all. So I don't know what we can construct out of this map.
When I spoke to Hachipola back at Chunga, he said that they used this left-hand channel as far as possible, and this appears to be the stumbling block. He said right near the end they had trouble getting out of it.
That geologist we spoke to seemed to think that the fault line lay across here and possibly another one down there, and he thought we might be able to expect perhaps even a waterfall in there, which we'll have to be careful when we go into. Maybe we don't fly over the top of it.
Do you think we'll have to do any portaging?
We may do.
There's a lot of options for channels there, but very few here.
The impression I got was that if you find one bad one, you can probably go back up a little way and perhaps come down another way. But wherever you go, you're going to find some pretty steep water.
So we could be in for a long walk.
Navigation became extremely difficult as the river divided and further divided itself in the course of negotiating the numerous islands and rocky outcrops. Thus it was, with a great deal of uncertainty and trepidation, that we entered this region. From our observations of the maps and aerial photographs available, this section of the river threatened to be one of the most hazardous. It was imperative that we select the most navigable channels of water, as rapids and obstacles were to be the order of the day, like this one, where we had to carry the boat some 20 meters across the rocks. The boat crews could not afford to relax as we proceeded into this isolated, hostile environment. We were forced to maintain an extremely slow pace, which heightened the danger from the ever-present hippo.
Soon after, we had to tie up to investigate a muffled roar. This could only be the big rapid, the one that had claimed other boats before us. Mayuku, the place of the fast water. It was terrifying. As we approached the lip, the water seemed to rise up before rushing downwards at more than 50 kilometers an hour into a 200-meter spray race. Our boats crashed and lurched through the awful cascade in seconds. It was certainly a hair-raising moment for the crew members. And then finally, a great relief to be through safe and sound as we knew we had defeated the big one.
What an experience this is, when the initial fear changes in a flash to euphoria, and then jubilation as you hit the calmer waters below.
The river had beaten us. Slowed up by many obstacles and Mayuku-Yuku, we were forced to spend an unscheduled night in the bush. And with a big fire and our backs to a rock, we spent an uncomfortable night with animal sounds all around us. Off again at dawn, confident that only a few hours would bring us to camp. But the river came up with further surprises. It was now becoming apparent that the channels we were selecting in order to continue downstream were more difficult, and eventually the way was blocked by a 100-meter stretch of boulder-strewn waterfalls through which navigation was impossible. There was no other choice but to port.
We first attempted lifting our boats fully laden, but after a few yards realized this was impossible. The inflatables were stripped to their component parts and manhandled over thorn bushes, across streams and around boulders. A route for the trek was established, which took us around two colossal domes of rock, some 700 meters inland, to re-enter the river below the fall. We followed game tracks as much as possible. Elephant and buffalo spoor were very much in evidence. We all wondered as to the reaction of an elephant had he come across this large grey object with 7 pairs of legs trundling through his domain. Fortunately, we were not so disturbed. Some 5 kilometers and 10 hours later, after much sweating and with aching shoulders, we reassembled our boats at the water's edge, hoping that this performance would not have to be repeated.
Back on the river again, the hippos we encountered were startled by our presence, for they had little experience of human beings or motorized boats. This could also have been the reason why the crocodiles charged the boats on several occasions.
Without warning, we were pulled by a strong current into a rapid, we aptly named the Mwenga Pit. We misjudged the stopper wave and were completely swamped. We were then hurled into the granite rocks forming a sharp corner in the rapid. The boat tilted precariously and our paddles were useless as we cartwheeled along the rock face. I tried to use the engine to get us into safer water, but to no avail. We were eventually swept free of danger, just in time to see Dean's boat come hurtling through this raging torrent.
Losing sight of Peter's boat as it went into the rapid made us apprehensive of what lay in store for us. In a few moments we were through. It was really exciting, fast and rough boating which required coordinated paddling. Before continuing, it was necessary to stop and bail some 200 to 300 litres of water from the boat, as this water surges and upsets the balance badly. A few miles downstream, the river widened, and we knew we were entering Lake Itesi-Tesi, which is a man-made lake built to regulate the flow of the Kafue River. The journey across the lake to Musungwa Lodge took us 5 hours. We experienced cold, buffeting winds and a far rougher passage than we had anticipated. As we sighted camp, the immediate thought was for a beer and a warm meal, after an unscheduled night stop in the wilds and 2 exhausting days on what turned out to be the worst section of the river.
of dawn saw us at the water's edge below a Teshi Dam wall, preparing for the long leg of the trip through the Kafue Flats. Extra food and fuel had to be carried, and for this we utilized our smaller inflatable as a supply tender. The flats are a vast expanse of shifting swamp, through which the river meanders, and sometimes we had difficulty in establishing the true course of the river. The landscape was featureless, and the monotony was relieved by a stopover at Lokivar National Park, which is the home of one of the 3 types of lechwe to be found within Zambia, the Kafue lechwe.
This antelope has adapted itself particularly well to its watery environment, having long, narrow hooves to assist in negotiating the swampy terrain. They are extremely strong swimmers and will quickly take to the water in times of danger. It is the most distinguished of the lechwe family, the male having very impressive lyre-shaped horns. Calving occurs in September to October at the height of the dry season. The young retain their winter coat from birth until the end of the following winter. The highly gregarious lechwe have had their numbers seriously depleted by poachers in recent years, and the Zambian authorities have had to act to curb the decimation of this part of the country's national heritage.
After an uncomfortable last night spent in the boats, we had only 100 kilometers to the finish. It was still bitterly cold, and everyone was wrapped up against the biting wind, and in their own thoughts, as the goal was in sight. But in spite of our joy at this prospect, there was sadness. Kafuex was almost over. The fantastic comradeship, the laughter and fun, the amazing wildlife, the hardships and the excitement were finished, and we would return to our normal lives.